friends, I'm pleased to greet you at the event from Syber.fund in St. Petersburg. Thank you for coming. Shortly remind you our rule. Please ask questions using microphone that our colleagues who are watching online translation can hear the questions too. Follow our news in our groups and sign in if you haven't done this. I give microphone to our guest Alexander Chepurnoy. He will tell you something interesting. Please greet Alexander.
Hello, nice to meet you. Topic of today's lecture, not so smart contracts. Dilemma after dilemma. Slides and presentation in English. This lecture was presented to the students of State University in Virginia, and now I'm presenting it to you. The lecture will be more technical and a little bit philosophical, as it can be seen from the title of the lecture. A short information about myself. I worked on the project Next. There were no smart contracts at the time, but were ideas similar to them. Then I was co-founder of project smartcontracts.com. And domain this title was bought. After I started to work in IOTK research, which is famous for Cardano and development of Ethereum Classic Client and other projects. Now I'm co-founder of Ergo platform blockchain. Let's start with historical aspect of money. Here is 5,000 note on the table. And Alice and Bob, standard participants in cryptographic protocols, and money belong to who will take the note first. There is no methods of protection, and one of innovation, which is connected with cryptocurrency, is appearance of programmable logic for money.
Вещей, связанных с криптовалютами, это как раз появление некой программируемой логики у денег. То есть теперь мы возьмем вот монетку, биткоин.
If we take this coin, in our case Bitcoin, we can say that it is protected by public key, and the coin is associated with public key, and only owner, if private key, can spend the coin.
До тех пор, пока у него нет приватного ключа Алисы. Вот. Монетки, правда, у нас немного не так выглядят в цифровом мире.
Coins look like differently in digital world, not like in material world. First of all, they have arbitrary denomination, and to avoid double spending, the hours become invalid.
Цифровые объекты у нас, когда подаются на вход транзакции, чтобы, соответственно, избежать повторной траты, они становятся...
So we have the scheme of transaction in Bitcoin. Transaction creates several coins, called out transaction spends several coins of arbitrary denomination.
И транзакция также
When you see in the wallet balance, it is associated with address. Inside this process is more complicated. You have several coins, which is connected with public key, which is connected with address inside the wallet. All the difficulties are hidden, and you see character which is connected with address. By the side it is more complicated. Even in the case with two transactions, a certain graph of how a coin is created and spent each Bitcoin, transaction is valid if it spent a coin. That was not spent before to identify the validity of a transaction in Bitcoin. We need to know the set of unspent coins at this moment of time. Coins protect themselves. With the logic that we will consider now, program that protects coin we talked about, public key, it is simplification. In fact, coin in Bitcoin is protected by program, which is written in Bitcoin script. And when you run a network node in the computer, Bitcoin full node, you check all transactions from the first block.
На компьютере узел сети биткоин, да, ну, полный узел, не какой-нибудь там SPV клиент, вы проверяете все транзакции самого изначального блока.
And at the same time, you run an interpreter which check validation of coins. If it was spent or not, all spending, all programs should be valid.
В ходе истории или нет. Вот, то есть, соответственно, все траты, все.
Generally, we can use such notion as Authentication Language, which appeared after Bitcoin in 2017.
Такое понятие, как язык аутентификации.
Authentication language is connected with a scheme which is consists of several components. Interpreter in case of Bitcoin, it is Bitcoin script.
Язык аутентификации, да, это некий язык, который связан с вот такой схемой, состоящей из нескольких компонентов. Соответственно, вот у нас есть интерпретатор.
At the entrance, we have a coin which is protected by a program. We also have general context of the state of blockchain at the moment. And proof of spending of this coin, which is interpreter used with the program and with the context in order to get one of possible options, yes or no. If it is possible to spend a coin or no. Now people think of other examples of using. For example, the door is protected by a program, and I can say that if it is raining, I can let a person to dry out. If there is no rain, I do not let a person in. It's checking a condition. Known context plus a person should identify himself. It means to prove that he knows secret key, which is corresponding to public key. The program which protects coin or other object should be limited in order not to go into a cycle of infinity. Because if you try to spend a cycle of infinity, cannot exist in such conditions. And it's difficult to imagine that situation Do you have questions? Agafonov Evgen, Crypto Genome Project. First slide, please, about the coin. I want to say that affiliation of any money is determined by consensus, agreement of the entire community, which use the system, and in this case, it is built on trust, and here there is consensus between Alice and Bob. Human relationship, it is known who owned the node, and this condition determinate their behavior. In the case with Bitcoin, it is better to compare with private key, which is laying on the table. I want to say that there can be some rules in the system. For example, men that stand near the table and say, "Who can take money in Bitcoin?" We have active nodes which have their logic, and these nodes are digital. And can protect themselves, not like in material world. Nodes have no logic. In digital world, there is logic, which is checking with the process of interpretation. It means that checking the history of Bitcoin, your node find a block, in which interpreters say yes, but it should be no. And if it was spent, results would not correspond, and the context is not concerning this person. But it is concerning the logic, and rules are not out. But they are inside the program, and money like in game, digital twins. Are just the copies of the real world. For example, there is Office processes, and there is Microsoft Office in the digital world. Nowadays, opportunities of material world outperform their analogies. Thank you. Is this all presentation? No, just part. I will have more questions. It is just a part developing the concept of Authentication Language. This is a concept of unreached digital counterparts. One of the examples, besides money, is smart ballot. This term appeared not so long ago in 2017. The first post and the only one on this topic is statement voting. The idea is that instead of the vote, it can be used program that will be executed on the context. And votes of other people, but there are some problems that will be solved. At the moment of counting, if your ballot has a program inside, this program will be executed, and the result will be counted. For example, we come with friends somewhere, and we have one free day in the end of our visit. We need to decide where to go. Where to go on an excursion or in bar. Who want to see the city say yes, and who don't like walking can say that he will go to museum. In the case of the rain, and then votes will be counted. There is such a concept. It is not useful for large voting, but good for local communities.
Национального масштаба, но вот для, опять же, небольших сообществ, особенно вот в контексте там...
And in the context of cryptocurrency, it can be useful.
Наверное, будет полезным.
So we have smart money and ballots. Let's see in details how Bitcoin script works. Bitcoin script is specific stack language. They were very popular people in the USA. Use them even in cosmic industry. This structure is formed like a rule, first in, first out. First come in, first come out. So you can put something on the top, the reading operation are the cheapest. The rest is done very not trivially. The stack-based language like Bitcoin script allow the bit operations on the top of stack. To put there or to take coins in Bitcoin, this is protected by the program, and the proof of spending is protected too. The context in the Bitcoin is minimal. It used bytes of spent transaction and the moment of time. It can be used from 0.1 to 0.13 version. In the language, there are cryptographic instructions. Check the signature, check several signatures to compute a hash. And now let's try to execute a program, like a compiler. We will execute a popular program paid to public key hash, where 18% of outs are not spent in Bitcoin. They are protected by 4 instructions. So let's see how does it work. Imagine perfect conditions. This script protects the coin, and these 2 scripts spend the coin. How does it work in Bitcoin script? First of all, we put together in and out scripts and get such a program, and stack is empty on top of unexecuted instructions. We have public key signature. It is a data in the braces. We put it on top. Then we have operations op, dup. It means double of the last element, so we have not 1, but 2 public keys. Then op hash 160 function compute hash from protected script.
Затем папки хэш, это, соответственно, из защищающего скрипта некий хэш.
Put that information in the stack.
Его в стек. Затем инструкция
Then op equal verify instruction if they are equal. We go
Если
further.
они равны, мы идем дальше.
If not, an exemption is thrown, and the coin cannot be spent. Compare, imagine, optimistic situation. So one instruction is left. Op check SIG.
И, соответственно, у нас остается одна инструкция op check SIG.
On the top, there is a public key, and to check the signature, we use op check SIG instruction.
Подпись, а мы это делаем, вот как понятно из названия инструкции check signature, проверить подпись, соответственно, нам нужно еще...
And we need to use a message to check. We take bytes for checking whether signature correspond to the public key on the top.
Сообщения мы берем некий неявный аргумент, байты транзакции. И, в общем, если у нас действительно подпись соответствует байтам транзакции и публичному ключу, то на вершине...
So, if everything is good, we have true on the top.
True. И, в общем, если у нас, по-моему, если вершина стека, да, там не пустая и не равна нулю,
So it is not empty or not a zero, the coin can be spent.
считается как истина, ну, значит, тратить монету можно. Во.
We have just executed the most popular in Bitcoin.
В биткоине
It is needed because the script helps to save space in the address instead of 32, in Bitcoin 33 and 34 bytes.
Пространство, где, во-первых, в адресе, то есть вместо 32, даже в случае биткоина, там 33 или 34 байта у нас публичный ключ.
So we can put the service bytes.
Но там еще надо дошить несколько служебных байт, да, то есть там, ну,
And it will be 36, 37. So we have 160 bit or 20 bytes, service bytes. And we have space inside your node. And it is good, without any doubt. This script is useful. Do you have questions?
Этот незатейливый скрипт весьма полезен. Вот, какие-то вопросы? Или идем дальше? Давайте дальше рассмотрим.
Let's see the other example. Atomic Cross, Chain Swamps. Alice has tokens in chain A.
На биткоин-скрипте. Пример у нас обмена ценностями между двумя блокчейнами. То есть, допустим,
Bob has tokens in chain B. They can use exchange. But imagine that they do not trust exchange. And want to exchange from different without intermediaries. It is possible. And is not very complicated.
Это не очень сложно.
One of the variants is good.
Вариант решения я сейчас покажу. Вот, может быть, его
But of course, there are some difficulties in the realization.
несколько нюансов, над которыми, в общем, не мешало.
But the scheme in whole is good, simple and safe. So it works like we have two scripts in different blockchains. One is one the 100 blocks high, and Bob with current height of 5,000 blocks. Alice choose some big random number and compute the hash. So we cannot find this number x in the space of possible values. Alice's script is logical conditions to lines. The first line is conditions of money repayment. It is always that Bob cannot answer and the money can be freezed. And it is needed to give it back after some time. For this, it answers the first line. We have had more than 1000 plus, some value and timeout which is specific for Alice and Bob. If the time more than timeout passed, and if the height is more than the initial moment of time plus timeout, Alice's signature is enough to spend the coin. The second line is about Bob's function. It means that before timeout, Bob can spend the coin if he knows the secret key. So Bob make almost the same script. Bob can spend the coin before timeout. They have different initial moments. As in different blockchains, the time flows differently. And it should be different, as Alice can spend Bob's coin unfair. She can stretch out time. And to spend this coin, she should present the secret X. And when she spends the coin, she presents X. Bob learns the secret and spends the coin. This is why we need different timeouts and different conditions. Alice has longer timeout, because if they are equal, Alice can wait almost to the end of timeout. And then, trying to spend Bob's coin, as Bob has no time to spend her coin. So we need to have different timeouts. Alice should have longer timeout in Bitcoin. It is about 24 hours or something like that. But of course, it depends on conditions. And blockchain and other details, I think it's clear. If you have questions, please ask. Alice can spend the coin earlier than Bob, and can spend his and herself coin. And if the timeout is longer, Alice should wait to the end of timeout. And if the timeouts are similar, or Alice has shorter, Bob can have a problem. Bitcoin script has problems. There are not so many cryptographic instructions, And when it is needed to build some protocols on Bitcoin, it can be impossible. As in Bitcoin, there is no ring signature or something else for these things. Hard fork is needed, limited support of cryptographic protocols. I will not go into details. It is because of the scheme of signatures and because of an approach in whole. It was created in 2010 and there are many problems with it. The worst is that it has many vulnerabilities that allow to do DOS attacks against the network. And many instructions are switched off. And the language is very limited. And we need more powerful language. Still simple and efficient to the developers make it effective. Every script should be done in predictable time. In predictable manner. It is enough to have asymptotics. We say that script is completed. Lock of the size of program or something like that. Asymptotics is good, but not enough. In Bitcoin condition, it is needed to handle 2000 or 3000 transactions in several seconds. It is concrete time of process. And it is one more problem in Bitcoin. There are not so many instruments to work with the stack languages. All developments can be separated into two categories. High-level language, compiled into Bitcoin script like DEX, EV, and developments in new smart signatures languages.
Есть также разработки в области новых языков.
I used Notion Smart Signatures before I used Authentication Language. There is also a new term, Smart Signature. It's not just a signature that is static, it uses cryptography. The proof of secret information and promulgable opportunities. There are developments in sphere of requirements for these languages. And there is committee in the consortium W3C, which is developing standards for web. Some people are working on development of the standards for these languages. To make protection for this language In Ergo we work on development of Sigma-state language.
Языками, но пока еще очень далеко от этого. Вот, мы у себя в Ergo работаем над языком, который называется...
It is working name, it will be changed and be noticed, the way to make more powerful language, without losing safety on Bitcoin blockchain.
Для затравки, что мы обнаружили, это как можно сделать без потери гарантии безопасности более мощный вариант такого языка с росшим...
Which is used inside the program. In Bitcoin there is state. State is just bar spending transaction bytes, block height and timestamp, so we can add something, but not everything. We cannot say in the program that in the history of blockchain was a transaction with some conditions. Because the history of transactions grows linearly. And to validate the program, we need to use hard disk. We will talk about this a little bit later. It can be not good with the point of time. It's better to have all context in the memory. Some context we have in memory. We can use conditions on spending transaction. And we have... I spoke about this moment in previous lecture. We have a number of unspending transactions in Bitcoin. And if it is enough to validate transaction, we can authenticate the condition and include the root hash in the structure of block. So we can ask to prove for coin of existence of other coin. It will cost nothing, as she keeps in memory is one hash. In Ergo we go further in the coin. We have protected scripts and money, so we can add some registers of data. Two fields to prepare the amount of money, and script become a register. And other additional registers, and it is possible to build more powerful program logic. For example, crowdfunding, like Kickstarter. The project want to get 100,000 coins. The key of the project is X2.
То есть некий проект у нас хочет собрать 100 тысяч монет, да, и у проекта у этого ключ публичный X2.
And it should be made not after 100 block.
И хочет собрать он не позже, чем...
To sacrifice money, I create a coin with two conditions.
Соответственно, как я могу пожертвовать деньги? Я создаю монету, вот...
First line is line of a refund after 100 block.
Строка это строка возврата денег.
And before there is a condition,
до 100-го блока я говорю, что вот этот вот exist, да, это некое условие, которое...
A function which checks the correspondence of the object to a condition, outputs of the spending transaction. Check the conditions, which are created by crowdfunding. I can say that my coin can be spent only if it's not less than 100,000 coins. And associated with the public key X. The project should get 100,000 coins within one transaction. There is a limit of numbers of transactions. In Bitcoin, it can be 22,000 coins. 22,000 people need to collect at least 100,000 coins. So it will be more coins. It can be collected combining the output from the first transaction, which collect 100,000 with other. I think it's clear. So we use condition of spending transaction. It can be made very easy. In Ergo we have a language and it looks like a set of logical conditions. So, further we will have a coffee break. But before, I tell you about the last example. Let's imagine that the coin knows herself. There is a variable that contains the knowledge about the coin. You can build some sort of recursive logic, for example, currencies with Demurrage. These currencies disappear with time. You have, for example, 100 rubles at the beginning of the month, and in the end you have 98. Such money are not suitable for savings, but a good stimulating circulation. This money was popular in 1930, and nowadays there is interest too. So you won't quickly get rid of it. And it is logical to do like that due to this increases circulation of money. In economics, and it is possible to make Demurrage currency. It is one coin fry, which is made by one of Bitcoin developers, and these conditions exist on the level of consensus. We try to make such currency through the script. All the coins in the system should have the condition of spending, like in the first line. The first line is a user script, and the user can put there everything. But the rest is a part of consensus. And if there are no such conditions, the coin cannot exist in the blockchain. This is second condition. It is said that variable self contains height of coin creation time. And if the height of coin is more than the height of when it was created, plus Demurrage period, and spending transaction create a coin, the nominal of which is less than nominal value minus value Demurrage. A new coin contains the same script, and it can be spent. There are no secrets miner can spend this coin. But miner cannot spend more coins than them cost. Which means the cost of Demurrage miner should make the coin that will have the same script.
Переменная dem-cost, которая обозначает стоимость демаррейджа. Вот. То есть майнер обязан создать монету.
And its nominal cannot be less than certain one.
Скрипт, да. И, то есть, ну вот абсолютно такой же. И, соответственно,
there are some features which I omit.
Денежный номинал не может быть меньше определенного.
It is also needed to check the conditions, but we omit these difficulties. You can think about this after. A lecture is called Not So Smart Contracts, Dilemma After Dilemma. The first dilemma is about verifiers. And in the second part, we will speak safety and features. Languages are created with conflicting requirements.
Ой, на самом деле вот первое это можно убрать, это я буду потом рассказывать. То есть, смотрите, вот все эти
Usually, users want to make more possibilities in blockchain.
Исходя из противоречивых требований, да, можно сказать откровенно. То есть пользователь
But there are many limit script that uses imaginable context, cannot execute more than a concrete time.
То есть, в частности, любой скрипт на языке, да, использующий там, в принципе, любой более-менее вообразимый контекст, не может исполняться больше какого-то времени.
And the more new possibilities we add, the more difficult becomes the analysis of the goal.
Чем больше мы, соответственно, добавляем новых возможностей, да, и в язык, и в контекст.
If it possible to achieve in time, it was the first dilemma.
Гарантированного завершения.
Now we will have coffee break.
В нужный промежуток времени. Соответственно, вот такая вот первая дилемма, то есть что мы вообще хотим, безопасность или возможностей. На этом предлагаю сделать перерыв 10 минут, замену слайдов. Так,
let's start the second part of the lecture, and I will tell you about smart contracts. What is the difference between smart signature and smart contract?
В чем состоит разница? В некотором роде даже философская. То есть, когда мы говорили об умных
Smart signature is an attribute of an object.
Это был атрибут некого,
for example, coin, door, or bulletin.
или дверь, или бюллетень.
These digital objects have attribute, program which is connected with these objects.
Связанная с этим объектом, и которая показывает, можем ли мы.
And it shows whether we can operate with these objects. Smart contracts are not attributes of an object. There are subjects of a digital world.
Ну, во всяком случае, смарт-контракты в некотором идеальном понимании, да, умные контракты. То есть вообще...
This term was used in the context, which is different from what we are using nowadays.
Использовали в некотором контексте слегка отличном от того, что мы имеем сейчас.
Before blockchain, smart contracts were some kind of contractual obligations. Contracts which were signed on paper. And people want computers to understand them. I was at the conference in St. Petersburg on analogies of semantic web. And there were solutions how to translate paper contracts in a form which the computer would understand. Tasks which were useful to understand when there were a lot of contracts and comfortable to look after them. In the case of Ethereum smart contract, is an autonomous agent, a piece of code which is created once. And then exists in blockchain Ethereum. And in the case of Ethereum, autonomous agents, so to say, live in jar. Like worms.
У нас эти автономные агенты, они живут, как это называется, ну, как это, ну, черви, да, там живут в банке, ну, которые там на рыбалку собираются, вот. Да,
they live their own life, and people can observe them.
Соответственно, они там живут какой-то своей жизнью, и, соответственно, можно...
A little bit later, I'll tell you about this metaphor. And these smart contracts, these worms, mostly in anabiosis, are sleeping until getting a signal from a human or other contract. Mostly contract is in a static state. Then come a signal and contract update once state performs some actions, then falls asleep and wait for another signal. So in general, there is a situation in blockchain. And why did I choose this example with jar? Because in blockchain everything is transparent. You can see state of contracts in the case of Ethereum. Except for smart contracts, there are some user accounts which are controlled by people, and they are associated with public keys. It means that user account is a bunch. Public key and balance and smart contract is not associated with a key, it contains identifier. Usually a hash, and there is a balance, which is connected with smart contract.
Есть некоторое количество денег, связанных с умным контрактом.
There is a code and state. Code is illustrated as a language, like JavaScript. This is a simple example. Code is more complicated. There is an unchangeable code. Change the state of the code. Marketers of Ethereum say that Ethereum is a decentralized world computer. Let's imagine there is a notebook, slowing it by 1 billion times, and then give an access to the whole world.
Мы его берем, замедляем там в миллиард или там 10 миллиардов раз, а потом, соответственно, его
So that the whole world can solve their tasks. The beta version. In whole, the concept is not bad. But nevertheless, it is one computer for the whole world. So this computer is storage for smart contracts which live in anabiosis, and contract can react on signals, get up, and processes change the state, and make some actions. So, as all the rules determined, so handling blocks from first to the last, all nodes see one state. This is not correct. To name this computer decentralized, it is better to name it replicated computer. Distributed computer is not correct to use too. Here the system is not distributed. It is full replicated. It does not matter what happened with another computer in the system. Your computer will not suffer. We do not take into account the problems with consensus, as you replicate the whole state of the computer. This computer does not have background processes, as opposed to your computer, does not have scheduled tasks. You cannot say, give a signal to some block in some time. Adding of such capabilities is not good for effectiveness. And this computer is working in a strange way. As a rule, your computer is working or not. And if it does not work, you repair it, and then it works from the particular state in blockchain. It can be forked in Ethereum. It is often happens. And your computer can do rollback to the previous state or several states. And it is not an emergency situation. It is normal situation, working process when your computer do rollback. And then go to another branch of history. The depth of the rollback is limited. The probability of a rollback going down exponentially with depth. This is a feature of blockchains that use proof of work. Algorithm, it is proved in conditions when the larger part of work is made by honest participants. And these contracts are living in shared memory. Everybody sees the state of all smart contracts. And everybody can give a signal to any contract. It was a situation several months ago when it was blocked $40 million from wallets with multi-signatures. because somebody with a random contract sent out a command to commit suicide. There is such a command, it allows contract commit suicide, and the library contract, which was used by many users, send a signal to commit suicide. And money was blocked, so it can be such situations. It also should be clear that flow of messages that are sent in the computer one by one can be reordered by miners. With this is connected many problems. When we speak about tokens, they are made on Ethereum ERC-20 tokens. When people produce tokens on Ethereum, there are exchanges, and when miners see interesting order which is not in blockchain now, he can put his own order before. It is possible to do. It should be mentioned that in this computer, to replicate this state, taking into account all transactions in the architecture of Ethereum. You cannot go without storage of all user accounts. And smart contracts to validate new transactions. Without seeing it, you cannot say what it can cause. You should keep all the information. And the problem is that the state of this computer is growing very fast. Look at the picture. At the moment, there are about 30 million accounts. 5 or 6 million are the smart contracts. There are more impressive graph. Now the database grows. Database that uses the full Bitcoin node and is not the most economical way. It includes the additional info about transaction. Additional index, quite a hard flag X. Index is 1. Instead of 200 megabytes, it can be 70 megabytes. In Ethereum, the database is about 700 gigabytes, so we are losing the assumption that we should have ability to run a node. How people solve the problems? Look, I have said about it in previous report. So it is possible to download and check all the blocks from the initial time. But it is impossible to change transaction in a block, as they are fixed, though the header in Bitcoin. The header in Bitcoin about 80 byte. In Ethereum 200 and half byte. In the header there is a proof of work and is kept authenticated hash for the transaction in the block. So, it's impossible to change transaction. Even if you do not know them. You cannot present not valid transaction set. And in the Ethereum, it is kept hash of a current status. So all the accounts in the system, for a long time, not many users run the full node in the Ethereum. Usually, users upload the node in fast mode, in the Geth client. Parity client. This mode is working in the next way. First of all, you download the headers, you choose a moment of time. And from this moment, download the state. All the accounts in the system, for example, 10,000 blocks back. There is a special rule, it is not the consensus, but it is realized in the client, that you keep not only current state, but also history, and it's a question, for what this information should be kept. It's working in the way now. After this state, you use a number of full blocks. But it's a question whether this mode is safe, as it can be in cryptographic protocols. The answer is yes, but in certain conditions. There is an article on this topic. With my co-authorship, it's published. You can find it in the internet. Let's imagine that network members store this state some blocks back. They do like this, as they are honest members. But it can be not honestly. That is why there is a solution on this topic in this article. So if we download this state, is it good enough solution? We download not 700 megabytes, but a state. A week ago, for example, this state is about 50 gigabytes or 60 gigabytes.
Вот это вот состояние сейчас где-то порядка там 50 гигабайт занимает, если не ошибаюсь.
You download in this mode, and the most part of this state is about 50 gigabytes.
В этом режиме, и там, скорее всего, там большая часть это вот это состояние, ну, то есть, да, гигабайт 50, наверное.
It's not safe to keep this state on hard drive, SSD, as these devices do not greatly increase throughput from 80s. I speak about random access. The volume increased repeatedly, but if you need to read some section, going out cache, it can take a lot of time. Even SSD disks, industrial or custom, are not fast. The problem is that the storage is slow, and it's simple to attack.
Проблема в том, что когда вот это вот все лежит в медленном хранилище, да, то никто не мешает просто осуществить
and spend some money.
потратив некоторое количество.
Attack like those when you ask random elements of state, and such attacks were in Bitcoin in 2013, when it had not effective storage structure.
Скорее всего, на большинстве машин. И такие атаки, в принципе, имели...
In Ethereum, the attacks were in 2016. There are links and read about these attacks. In Ethereum, there were several attacks. One of them when hacker finds a way to create new accounts, very cheap in blockchain.
Несколько атак. И вот одна из них состояла в том, что атакующий нашел способ задешево, очень дешево создавать новые счета.
And they situated on random addresses. And it was very difficult to validate the block.
Жесткий диск тогда нещадно дергался, да, даже SSD-диски.
It took about 2 minutes for validation. In Ethereum, the normal time is 15 seconds. So the most part of the network stopped. It's a serious problem. And is discussed. And there is an idea to use proof of stake to generate blocks not in 15 seconds, but in 3 seconds. In this case, exponents start to grow faster. And it will be a great problem. And it's a question. Why there are no attacks on Ethereum now? And this state is larger than in 2016, and it's easier to make an attack. Its vulnerability. There are several variants to solve the problem. The first variant suggests to separate participants by type of storage. One group would store one state, and miners store this state. Other group keep nothing except the current state, only to check the proof that miners include in block. It's a guarantee of safety. I have said about this in December. You can watch my video, and there is the article that was published in Financial Cryptography in 2017. You can find it in the internet. The second solution can be a combination with the first one. And this solution is that you cannot be in the state free. The problem in Bitcoin and Ethereum is that you pay once and then you keep the state. In Bitcoin, it's the set of not spent coins, and in Ethereum, it's the current state of smart contracts. And user accounts and balances. So you pay once to create and then use this free. Is this model useful? There is an article on this topic. There is a link. It's said to about this component to take further time on the contracts.
том, чтобы, собственно говоря, брать еще вот за вот этот вот компонент, брать за то, как долго ваш умный контракт, допустим, живет в этом состоянии.
It's similar to the way cloud works.
Он там занимает место. То есть это, в принципе,
If you want to keep something in Amazon, you pay for it.
Хотите что-нибудь сохранить в Амазоне, вы Амазону платите и платите за, допустим, гигабайт в месяц.
So, it's suggested to pay for a block this price for a state. If you stop your contract, you start to pay for it.
Цена жизни вот в этом состоянии, то есть если вы из него вылетаете, допустим, делаете самоубийство своего...
There are discussions in the community of Ethereum on this theme.
Пока вы живете, платите, соответственно, есть обсуждение в сообществе эфириума, на самом деле несколько.
There is a variant of Ethereum which is implemented as side chain of Bitcoin. I cannot exactly say what does it mean, but they have a solution.
Я на самом деле не знаю, что все это значит, что там есть конкретно, но вот в частности какое-то решение у них там есть, я слышал. Вот, да-да-да.
Let's imagine that a user does not want to pay for the state, but this state is in blockchain, and we cannot delete it. So, we should delete it not from blockchain. And the problem is that the state is growing. It is written here. You use the boot option without this info. You download not full node, only part of blockchain. And this state is growing. And you download in the fast mode in the Ethereum blockchain.
То есть вот вы когда сейчас сгружаете в быстром режиме сети эфириума блокчейн,
you download the chain in the header. It grows not so fast, and then you download constant suffix of the full node of the blocks.
Ну там за все эти годы там всего гигабайт, в принципе. Затем вы сгружаете, опять же,
exponentially growing volume state.
Но вы сгружаете еще вот это экспоненциально растущий объем.
It is called. It's canonized.
В жаргоне эфириума это называется vault state.
And its hash is written in the header.
Канонизировано это представление этого состояния и, соответственно, его...
And it's growing. It should be done something with it.
То, что оно растет, надо с этим все равно что-то делать, особенно в свете того,
Vitalik Buterin making many things you can watch in the wiki in Ethereum.
Vitalik Buterin делает много что, если вы откроете...
The suggestions to solve these problems.
Википедия эфириума, вот даже по storage rent там несколько...
Each suggestion in this publication without the link, but he was there and heard the presentation.
Опубликовано где-то полгода назад, причем без ссылки на нашу статью, хотя он сидел в зале как бы на презентации, слушал.
There are versions of sharing. I cannot comment on this work as there is nothing to comment. And it's written not specifically. And there are some contradictory variants. So it's hard to comment. Vitalik offered 1 million for the solution. Let's wait for 1 billion. Frankly speaking, I have not heard. It's curious. Except sharing, there are other solutions on Ethereum. It can call dream solution. Let's imagine that there are some state. But nobody should store it. You can keep only your coins and contracts. But it's difficult with contracts coins. The transactions with coins which you use present proofs. That these coins exist in this state. There are no solutions and there are many problems. I hope that next time I can present you a solution. They are specific, and it's not enough to use simple data structures, which is built on hashing. Last time I speak about Merkle tree or dynamic tree. There are many problems why this should not be used, as there are exotic cryptographic constructions, which demand trust a procedure, initial generation of the system parameters. All parameters are public. There are no secret data. Nevertheless, somebody should generate these system parameters, but it's a topic for another lecture. So, if you have questions, you can ask. I have. You said about attacks. I think that there are attacks in service. What is a danger? It is dangerous as the most network would be out of sync. So, when the network wood is out of sync, the network breaks up on forks. And there are a lot of effects. For example, there are miners that are honest and others are not. And start to validate empty blocks. This situation was during the attacks. And there were theories that these did Chinese miners. They did this for more profit. So, while honest miners tried to validate transaction, Chinese miners missed the blocks, generated empty blocks, and instead of 5%, get 10%, 15% blocks. So, there is a theory of spam transactions, but nobody knows who had done the attacks. So, let's speak about smart contract. How the smart is built on Ethereum? It's built by a human. Some human account, or it can be another smart contract. It can be, so consider simple example. A human with a special transaction send code to blockchain. This code has a stage of initialization as an object-oriented languages. There are constructor and object. Then a constructor go to anabiosis. As it was said, it sleeps to a signal before message. Sometimes they can be very tangled, calls of chains from one contract. In fact, as the Ethereum marketers say, the contract's Turing complete that it does not really mean. A big question is what they mean. Well, let's say that how would contracts implemented in the programming language, which allows you to write Turing complete programs. But this does not mean that the environment itself performance. There allows you to run even theoretically in some deep model, Turing full contract. Such a question is generally little studied, but we cannot do, as I say, long playing in blockchain. We have a very tight time limit performance. Here again, the Ethereum nothing does not differ from Bitcoin, respectively. We need a calculation somehow to limit on the air. I'm not limited to cold gas, that is U for each the virtual machine instruction, for each contract instruction, that is executed when processing a message. Pay in a certain unit, that is, pay some amount of gas, and in transaction pay, how as you pay for gas, here is such two-stage payment plan up to. We have a low-level virtual machine. There is a certain language again, but stock no one uses. People now write not an assembler but on some high-level languages, such as like the salt of a child. There is accordingly some number of cryptographic structures. Again, quite limited. What I forgot to say that there are not enough limit calculation by the gas itself. We must eat, we can take, for example, execution of money. But again, suppose that someone had this money very much, and it can be very severe transactions start up the network. That is, to carry out attacks. To carry or again, miner can make transactions for network, putting on your block. Very heavy transaction, why did he receive this money back as compensation for the block? Respectively, there is also a limit of gas per block. This limit dynamic in the Ethereum. In every block, miners can shift it a little bit. In my opinion, by 1%. Well, it does not seem to. So it is important that there are miners on slightly can move up and down will take the limit. There is no block size respectively. Miners can potentially do very large blocks. Can also reduce block size, but indirectly through change. The gas limit per unit is accordingly. Dilemma number 2. As you remember, the first was about designing languages more than. Second dilemma is described in an article with 15th year and very short disquiz. Rational miner is actually advantageous. Skip block validation. There was even a bit of a problem revealed in real life. And as I said, to pass validation, especially during spam. So, allow the miner to earn more. Why? Here is a miner and there are graphic cards. Accordingly, flies to him very much. Have a block of action options 2, 1. accordingly the right to lead the block, and the further the harness the iron to generate a new block on top of this block. But during validation the iron is idle. Money is lost accordingly. Smart option is to assume that miners in front of you. Then do not be a fool. Probably he was right in the lead, but he did not. There will be no currency block to produce. Network that is. You miss the validation block immediately. You have iron starts. Work the first microseconds as it becomes not even a block had a god. Bitcoin is enough on the air we are, in my opinion also. Here and further we assume that all start to be so smart to guess that another miner is not a fool that he is, right led in the end. Respectively, it turns out that none of these miners, in fact, is leading. The very big question is what with this do and what it can do at all. To mean in practice, but in practice, the Bitcoin somehow was a chain of 6 generated fork blocks, starting with a non-valid block. That is, the miner just trusted each other, friend, and generated this kind of chain, which was then, respectively, was discarded. But here are 6 blocks that is an entire our principle. The network lived in some kind of invalid option. If the miner has generated wrong this chain, he will receive in the end reward or not, but early or late. Not that the block will be discarded as it were. There mine will go the story of another option. With just this it will be. The internal solution is protected that everything is accurate. Someone will definitely check. Why? Because if there are a lot of this deception unchecked, then we are now on we do not get the money line. But it's impossible such a situation is permissible, when most worse probably when all the miners act rationally. Validation of blocks, but I'm still full of nodes network. Then there are ordinary users, then there are users who see that at all. The blockchain is not valid, but all miners on it. The question works as though what's next? Well, then there is how when the situation probably will be resolved in real life. But this is not on. I understand the idea of rich simply do not give out some point every 2 transactions. Will be his prominent miner already understand that. Do not check, because we are now on the line, they do not get the money in. At some point, well, there is a solution that understand what point they will stop doing well at some point, and the question. And what point and what in general becomes all this. But in particular here in network Ethereum, here during the spam and even there for a while after, certain pools generated empty blocks. That is, then they in principle missed validation and further. So that do not generate not valid blocks and empty blocks, but they assumed that here we are flying. We are valid and block the block construct an empty block. You should lead the transaction. To have a status at though already as we are right, lead the previous block. Get to define a set of currency transactions. That is, they are simply generating empty blocks, and on that moment the reward for the block was much more than that reward which came with transaction respectively. But they did not lose special money. Behold. Yes, here is shown its principle the situation in a slightly different perspective. There are probably know that in Ethereum not only the blocks of the best chain, each block can indicate in principle some of their uncles on call blocks. There are heading of blocks not included in the main circuit. The big question is why is it done? Well, topic of separate discussion principle. There is no point in the case of the Ethereum. Let's say we are, but now we are. Let's skip right now. We'll look at the chart, the number of this. Here is the kind of blocks before that this chart shows us this. It showed the amount of work that was in principle wasted. Here the amount of work she did not have spent on the main chain, and generally this parameter must be minimized in both Ethereum and so on. Is sufficient large value of this parameter because between blocks only 15 seconds average and can be there are much less, and accordingly when the validation time grows the number of forks also grows. Accordingly more work does not go on appointment. Here we see a graph of this how you see it was flat before autumn 2017 except autumn 2016. This is just here spam. It was spam. Then everything became normal until November. The 17th year who will say what was in the November of the 17th year do not turn. Yes, correctly, CryptoKittens are captivated. Block of the Ethereum in November of the 17th year and the impact was not even worse than spam here. Respectively, in the end, there are probably bad visible viewers room. In certain days, number of blocks not caught network reached 2000 per day. So let's account up to it in days at as 86,400 seconds. In my opinion, we divide by 15, we get somewhere. There are about 6,000 about blocks, and we have day respectively here and around 2,000. Yet did not fall. That is enough. Here and now this is a schedule I took, still there, with an old presentation. That is in January. It has been like this since then has come down. It went down somewhere to the level of November. Yes, that is principle. Validation time for us is growing problems. Grow something you need to do here. Respectively, the partner writes a bunch of different documents that do and how to make this a dilemma number 3. Here is whether the Ethereum system is not a language, programming itself. Programming system itself really Turing complete in general. What is it can mean? But in fact, it is probably not the most important question, can more theoretical, practical consequence. And I think it's like a question on billion, certainly not even at 1. Imagine the Ethereum. Well, there are some popular contracts in it. People do the use of the token scheme there. My whole CryptoKittens here and choose say 95% of the most popular contracts. The question can be thrown out here. This is here Turing, pseudo-Turing complete solution, and accordingly replace it with something more simple and not so problematic, and maybe even to perform there as it all for outside the blockchain and at the same time 95% of the most popular Ethereum contracts. Well, leave the users with the answer in principle is unknown, except existential problems in the blockchain of the Ethereum have many problems developers. I am already compiling for 2 or 3 minutes if you have any questions. Basically, now, but I already finished in a couple of minutes, so you can wait with questions. Let's get it done already. Accordingly to the first thing that fell on the surface is hard to generate chains in these smart contracts. The very first brilliant developers smart contracts in the Ethereum tried to take certain deterministic data. In the smart contract there is something tricky there to calculate. That in fact it was very funny tragic, because again we are dealing with a glass jar. That is principle the code of each contract is visible. To hide something there is impossible. What is the amount of the lottery or their gambling has been broken at all simply is trivial, because people thought that no one will look at the rest of the contract for some reason. Further people began to try to find chains is beyond pseudo-random outside code contract. But it's all hard to do teaching, especially when it comes to its principle for some lotteries. Much further, as I said before, a very specific computer can go back and then decide, and up to you can come message from where you did not expect. In particular, and now, how $40 million was contract to a so-called re-entrancy bug. When one contact was called by another, he responded to one in response. And in the process of all this ending, there is allowed to throw out the exception of the day in the process. But to execution did not reach the required line code, where the money is allowed to be deducted. There with the right balance, that is, it all must be borne in mind. And in fact, high-level languages, this hides everything from fly, and disregard a particularly bad language. Here is a wonderful discussion in internet. Why is it bad? In general, everything is broken there from the system types and, as it were, before the water hides. In general, the whole idea with smart contracts and with the language of solidity, what that there are, let's do here. Let's this blockchain with these smart contracts, and let's make so that millions their developers began to write smart contract. Well, developers who yesterday they wrote there, I do not know the browser. There is some toy where there is a monkey banana throws permissible, but in principle thought happened. But there the results are often very sad, because when on the line was an impressive amount of a summer residence, and because at the moment there has already been or is simply lost for one time, there are many hundreds of $millions. That is, where the stake of such money is necessary after all, that the toolkit somehow forced, developer even hurting him wrong cuts. Here on the subject is a lot of developments, and how the system of the Ethereum are beyond, and well, it is generally a topic of a separate lecture also. You need to keep in mind the price of gas. Yes, that is. If today there is an Ethereum, there is $1, there is in a year 1,000 for talking to. So the contract that you have today perfectly performs its business tasks. Suddenly becomes too expensive for fulfillment of those business tasks that with this do certainly not very clear. Also keep in mind the gas limit per block. There was such a classic example of this safe company, not to customers, establish a contract for a smart contract, and requested for initialization of 2 million units of gas. And when there were spam attacks, miners, to limit attacks, as I said, they can slowly shift the gas limit to the block. That is, they together shifted the gas limit from 4 million up to 500,000, and then it turns out. And so the contracts from the company safe become, it is not possible to simply initialize. That is, the whole company and its whole business were withdrawn for several weeks from billion miners companies without, and wrote what there is an open letter in the ecosystem of type, please do not throw us out of business. But of course nobody cares about the company because that it was a matter of preserving. They must do this criminal in the first place. If there is a need to keep in mind this limit is what in the block after all, not one of your transactions will be. And so on, and often what people want make on the Ethereum generally useless, without any external data. But because inside the Ethereum we can apply only to data blockchain, its state is more exact than the Ethereum itself, this data from the external. If we need such a there has arrived, any ship to port or not that there are cunningly money to let out or whether outside a window or steal anything, there are stock price. If we need this data, we trusted the essence of the so-called oracle. Accordingly, we return again to trust in someone. The problem of trust is trying to decide what is so, but in general, this is not already is again a theme for a separate lectures. In general, on this note, I do not know. Are you optimistic about letting go questions on the rights that I have a microphone? The first question, you are talking about problems with random numbers that you can or the contract's code to look on the network in principle. If the developer is a leader, his borrow cannot be seen or the bytecode can be viewed as available. Well, the bytecode can be seen even by me. It seems there is before decompiler and bytecode there can be given some more. A high-level view of returning the code, and there respectively find one in principle, and a level assembler there are hacker in principle. Not particularly scary, that is in principle the same. The most programs on personal computers are always there in the heap of assemblers, and was found there. You need a comparison of the key, and then how would the volume talk some bytes? Tens of bytes. Not a very serious task of if you want to break a question like this. How much for the network will be the problem? If, as started in paragraph 2, payment for accommodation contract in the network with me on errors, well, let's say Ethereum in the present at all on the problem is what, but the die of 10 will be, and the problem, but which can, yes, there are say a certain amount of more traffic, minor to take as general problems. Can be a lot, that is, you want to say that this, it may not be very fair. That is who will have money, but in principle now, how this gas economy works. How much is honestly a question. Open in particular was recently released. Such a wonderful token, gas token, which allows in general to create gas reserves. When it's cheap, accordingly it is laid out when it there will rise in price. Well, gas token and go read now the details will not go into problem in the Ethereum network. From the classical point of view, still management of decentralized projects, such as Bitcoin, can be many in particular. Users who already have something placed, they did not subscribe. In general, the fact that they will begin to bully them suddenly money, but on the air I have it all still not a problem, because usually, if Vitalik said, it means principle somehow. And so the second question is item number 1, and how to get our users before distribution. In the first paragraph it was said that in the network groups will be allocated, and this is the first decision, how it's just your personal decision whether you want to start the state or not. But miners are obliged to bury him in principle, but we have done this for the Virgus already. Even in the test, this in the current that is here, just a certain checkbox in the setting that is. Do I want to store this whole state, or I want to download evidence and see it will be an additional charge? Yes. Not there are no payment at all. Payment is even somehow called an unsight you. You see the motivation through monetary incentives, through a reward. That is the carrot method in general. Now we are rewarding people only for the creation of blocks for preservation of something. We are nobody. We reward all these options with remuneration is usually not very simply, and always there is a certain altruistic component. In particular, it is quite clear what to do network. That is well proof reward you that is to collect this you have proved that you spend there 100 gigabytes of traffic to the network there. To pay you for it is quite incomplete, and there are certain things that can remunerate. In the Ethereum here again very large question that is, we can take this for these contracts, there is some discussion, but again, the very big question is how to make this effective. But again, here is the question, why should it suddenly be charged if no one did not subscribe to current users? Thanks. But the same question, as we transition to a proof of stake, and that is what is necessary to suddenly throw out miners with bots, if they seem to disagree of this new time, Vitalik said, "Dear colleagues, thanks." But the same question, as we transition to a proof of stake, and that is, what is necessary to suddenly throw out miners with bots, if they seem to disagree on this new time, Vitalik said. Dear colleagues, please all your remaining issues are transferred to the informal part of its concluding the question from online. Question from Marina Maganova. What kind of projects, in your opinion, are transferred? Question from Marina Maganova. What kind of projects, in your opinion, are created the most convenient systems for development of smart contracts and existing work? As I understand the issue of giving accept of Ethereum and the bug in nothing we have here, and that is, they will not release the coin, that he will not have the whole infrastructure exclusively for development and the logic of smart contracts, and to release the potential of technology irradiation. But only this is not quite blockchain, and again not some kind of closed decisions. There will be some contracts with Cardano and Tezos, but so far they are not present, so that is impossible to compare not working scheme with a working. So for Ethereum, you can write and not inherent, and there are other languages such as Solidity X, some say superset of language Solidity. Accordingly, there may be more, some languages about which I don't know well. A lot of development is underway. The Ethereum does not limit. As a high-level language, you can use whatever you want later in the bytecode of the virtual machine to compile here. Well, that's why the Ethereum is such a first experiment which we were given. A lot of development is underway. The Ethereum does not limit. As a high-level language, you can use whatever you want later in the bytecode of the virtual machine to compile here. Well, that's why the Ethereum is such a first experiment, which we were given very much materials for reflection, and in general. Thank you for this Ethereum, and thank you very much.